On today's show, the Cavs didn't get Miles Bridges. Where should they turn their attention next as this offseason rolls on? Plus, the coaching staff starting to come together for Kenny Atkinson. That's all ahead right here on Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. You can find this show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Give us a 5-star review. Say some nice things as well. You can also check us out on YouTube. Search Locked On Cavs on YouTube. If you're watching this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you know when things go up. If you're not watching this video, well, watch this video and go do all those things. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs are over in both basketball and hockey, there's still so much action to be had with FanDuel. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers at places like 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, and a couple of other ones along the way. On today's show, talking about the Cavs not getting Miles Bridges as he is returning to Charlotte on a 3-year deal worth $75 million. Also going to spend some time talking about what should be next for the Cavs. Should they be making a big trade, a small trade, try and focus on improving around the margins in free agency, or just running it back? And then also, I do want to touch upon Isaac Okoro, whether or not he could be part of a sign and trade somewhere else, and Kenny Atkinson putting together his coaching staff is now, we have at least 3 assistants that have been reported to be on the staff. I think that the hires so far have been great, but I want to start with the Miles Bridges situation. I made my thoughts known on Friday's episode right here, Locked On Cavs. I think Miles Bridges is a good basketball player. I don't know that Miles Bridges would have been a great fit in Cleveland. I think that there are some basketball things that make this so it wasn't some flawless, just plug and play fit with him being the number 3 guy in Cleveland. And also the off the court things with Miles Bridges, I think would have been really difficult for a lot of Cavs fans to get past. And I very much understand that. And that is something that was the biggest reason for me why I was against the Miles Bridges signing, but he's back in Charlotte on a 3-year, $75 million deal to return to the Hornets. So now the Cavs have to move on to their next option. I don't think that they ever expected to land Miles Bridges. I do think that there was some interest. I don't know exactly how serious it was, but I don't think that this ever got to a point in Cleveland where they thought Miles Bridges was going to be a member of the Cavs. I don't think it ever got there. But now they have to move on. And there are a number of different things that, this offseason so far has obviously been very quiet. The only real news we've gotten with the Cavs has been the Donovan Mitchell contract extension, which was formally announced on Sunday that is signed, sealed, and delivered. He's signed that 3-year extension worth $150 million. So that's obviously the best news that you could have asked for in terms of the player personnel side of things this offseason. That's been done. That's taken care of. But there hasn't been anything else. Now, the rumored interest in Miles Bridges I thought was a good sign just in terms of the Cavs wanting to improve this roster and realizing that things aren't good enough as they are. They do have to get better in certain areas. I think that this roster still is a pretty good one. And I don't think that it necessarily gets the credit it deserves because of how beat up and injured this team was last year, where, they still won 48 games despite their 4 best players only playing, I believe it was 28 games together. It wasn't like those guys were in the lineup every night. So that is, in some senses, a success, but I still don't view this team right now as a top tier team in the East. And I think that is something that, are there moves out there that put them in that top tier in the East? I'm not so sure about that. I don't know if there are. Like, if you swap out Jarrett Allen and Karis LeVert for Brandon Ingram, which is something that we're going to talk about quite a bit this week on the show, If you make that swap, does that put the Cavs in the same tier as Boston, New York, and Philly? I'm not so sure. I think they're closer to it, but I'm not so sure that it puts them in that championship contention tier. I don't know that it does. But I do think that right now, in my opinion, the Cavs in Milwaukee are sort of at the top of that second tier, where I don't view them as championship contenders, but I think if they get the right matchup in the playoffs, there's not a series they can't win. Maybe Boston, but if things break their way, they can beat anybody. But I don't know that I view them as a championship contender right now. So with not getting Miles Bridges, I think the question becomes, okay, is it worth revisiting the trade for Brandon Ingram? Is that something that is worth thinking about again? Not that the Cavs ever stopped thinking about it, but I think that our attention was diverted away from that as the Miles Bridges news came up at the end of last week. Is that something that's worth revisiting? If the Cavs are going to make a big move this offseason, and by big move, I mean acquiring a potential all-star. If they're going to make a big move this offseason, it's difficult for me to see a big move other than that one. Like, that is the one that I see. And this isn't to say that this front office cannot get creative. They absolutely can. If you would have talked to me on July 8th of 2022, I would have said, yeah, I'm not sure I see a big move in this team's future this offseason. And they went out and traded for Donovan Mitchell a couple months later. So just because I don't see it right now doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I think that is the one that is the most likely to happen. If they are going to make a big move, I think Brandon Ingram still does make a lot of sense in Cleveland. I think that he does. If they want to make not as big of a move, if they want to make a move around the margins in the trade market, which I've always thought the Cavs were going to be a bigger player in the trade market than they would be in the free agent market. But if they are going to make a medium-sized move, I guess we'll say, where it's not a move that's going to bump them up a tier, but it could make them better as a basketball team, I think that move is probably one for someone like Cam Johnson or Dorian Finney-Smith of the Brooklyn Nets. And it's a move that probably involves Isaac Okoro as a sign-in trade. I know there's been a lot of noise surrounding that at the end of last week and a little bit over this weekend, that Isaac Okoro could be somebody that is on his way out because the Cavs might not want to pay him what he could command from another team. If he can find a big deal from another team, that has to be something where, okay, great for him. Let's make a sign and trade work, because I do not think that he's going to end up on any of the teams that still have cap space. I think he's probably, there's been a lot of noise with him potentially ending up in Brooklyn with the Nets as part of a sign and trade. And that is something that I do think makes sense. And depending on what the Cavs could get back, I think is something that Cavs fans should be pretty interested in. I think that these two teams, the Cavs and the Nets, I think they are trade partners like a match made in heaven right now, because the Nets want to rebuild. The Cavs have a couple of young pieces that very well could be one young piece for sure in Isaac Okoro, plus an expiring contract in Caris LeVert that I think could make a lot of sense for Brooklyn. So that is something that I absolutely think is worth watching as we get deeper into this offseason. But I think ultimately that this is going to be something that, we keep circling back to Jared Allen and Caris LeVert for Brandon Ingram. The trade works. If they could convince Brandon Ingram on a contract extension that is not the maximum dollars, like paying Brandon Ingram $50 million a year is not something that sounds super palatable, I guess, is the best way I could put it. If Brandon Ingram is on a $35 million a year contract, or even a $40 million a year contract, instead of a $50+ million a year, I think it'd be 52 is his max. That changes things. I think you feel much better about that, because if the Cavs make that trade and they're trading for Brandon Ingram, and they've got to pay him $52 million a year, plus Donovan Mitchell's contract, plus Darius Garland is still on the books. Evan Mobley I believe, going to get a max extension this summer. That'll be on the books. That team's going to be a tax team without question and potentially approaching the second apron, which I think if we've learned anything this offseason so far, it's that teams are willing to do basically anything to stay out of that second apron because of just how penal it is. So those are questions that you have to answer as you think about, well, what's next for the Cavs now that they missed out on really probably the best free agent available to them. Maybe not the best overall free agent, but the best free agent they would have had a realistic crack at. Now that they've missed out on him, circling back to the Brandon Ingram trade, how does that affect things down the line? Now, the Cavs could just run this back. I don't necessarily think that's the best idea, and I'll explain why next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. We all love sports. If you're watching this and listening to this, you love sports. Sports is everything to you, and FanDuel has everything you need to make your summer great. Because just because the playoffs are over in hockey, in the NBA, doesn't mean that the sports go away. There's still plenty going on. I know the All-Star break is approaching in Major League Baseball, but the WNBA is still going on. You've got lacrosse that you can bet on, and FanDuel is the place to go. All you have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that you're in the mood. Plus, this summer, FanDuel hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. One of the things that I really like, and the Cleveland Guardians have been playing, maybe not their best baseball lately. I will say they had 5 guys named to the All-Star team over the weekend. That was a really cool thing. Really cool to see them get the recognition that they deserve. Their odds, and I've been talking about this, to win the World Series, I was talking about them at plus 2,200 a couple weeks ago right here. Now they're down to plus 1,800. So FanDuel starting to believe a little bit in the Cleveland Guardians. Maybe you should too. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So one of the options that the Cavs have is running it back, where they could just essentially keep the same core that they have, which they've talked about that. And Kobe Altman at his end of season availability talked about how he doesn't see why they need to separate the guards. He doesn't see why they need to separate the bigs. And it's been reported, certainly, that the Cavs don't want to move on from any of the core 4 in Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, who obviously is not going anywhere, and Darius Garland. So what if they don't add on the outskirts of this roster? They haven't lost anybody as of right now. Isaac Okoro is the guy that could potentially be gone as part of a sign and trade elsewhere, or, they do have matching rights. Like if he signs an offer sheet with another team, he could end up back in Cleveland. Like that is not something that is out of the question, or the Cavs could just come to terms with him. Like they could come to an agreement. That is certainly something that's possible as well. So those are the things to think about. But if they don't add to this team, if they don't add anything, I think that fans should be disappointed in that. Not because this team isn't good, but because you always need to be getting better in the NBA. And I do think that there's internal development to be had. Like I think Evan Mobley is going to be better under Kenny Atkinson. I think Donovan Mitchell going to keep getting better. I think Darius Garland is going to be much better this upcoming season than he was last year. But that doesn't mean everything around them is good enough. Now, will Kenny Atkinson elevate some of the other guys? Sure. I think Sam Merrill could have the season of his career, maybe, and we'll find out more about this as we get into Summer League later on this week. Maybe Emoni Bates is a guy that's part of the rotation, and that is something that is just some built-in added extra depth or built-in improvement. Maybe all those things come true, but I still think that there are guys available either in the free agent market. I look at someone like a Gary Trent Jr. and maybe he makes sense in Cleveland, or the trade market. I think that running it back, the core 4, fine. I've made my thoughts known that I think making a trade, trading away Jared Allen could be a way to improve this team. But if the Cavs don't want to do that, there are still other ways to improve. And I think that improvement is needed. Because right now, as I mentioned earlier, this isn't a team that I view as a championship contender. And I don't know how many moves, if any there are, that put them in that class. But I know that there are moves out there that get them closer to it. I know that there are moves that they can make, big and small, that would make me feel as if this team is better suited for playoff basketball than it was this past April and May. And that's what this offseason should all be about. Because I truly do believe, as this team is constructed right now, they've got a lot of talent. They're hard to prepare for. They're a really good regular season team. I get that the East has gotten better, and it has. New York is better. Philly is better. Milwaukee is not better. Indiana, I don't buy. Orlando is better, but I still think they're 5th or 6th. I still think the Cavs are going to be a 50-win team just because of how good they are in the regular season. That is not something I'm concerned about. Despite the East getting better, despite some of those teams behind the Cavs maybe catching up a little bit, or maybe Philly jumping the Cavs, New York jumping the Cavs, despite all that, I think the Cavs are going to be a home court advantage team. I absolutely think that they're going to be a team that wins 50-plus games, that has home court advantage in the first round, but the playoff success now is the thing that should start to matter more. You know, the first year, they lost in 5 games to the Knicks. They won 51 games. They could still tout that season as a success because that regular season was awesome. This year, they could tout as a success because they won a playoff series in the first round. The regular season wasn't as good, but no one cares about that because the postseason success was there. The regular season should, and I believe will be, a success for the Cavs this year, but unless they make upgrades on the margins of this roster, really on the margins of this rotation, not the margins of the roster. I'm not talking about finding an improvement over Tristan Thompson as the 12th or 13th guy. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm talking about finding who's a better 7th guy than Karis LeVert or 6th guy than Karis LeVert. Even if it's not better, who's a better fit? Who's maybe a better shooter off the bench that can come in? Maybe who's a better 5th starter so you can push Max Strus to the bench and he plays that 6-man role better than anyone else could. Those are the types of moves that I think could be something that help to vault this Cavs team a little bit closer to that championship contender type of tier that I just don't think that they're in. And maybe Isaac Okoro in a sign and trade is a key to that. Because, and here's why I think teams, specifically the Nets, should have interest in Okoro. He's only 23. I think he's a much better basketball player than he was able to show in Cleveland. I don't think that he has had the role that he would ideally like to have, where he's been a 3-and-D guy, but he's also been somebody that has been hesitant at times to take those shots from outside. I think that giving Okoro a little bit of a bigger offensive role on a team that isn't planning to be good could be a really good thing for his career, because you know defensively he's going to be good, and he's been good on defense his entire time in the NBA. But I think the way for him to really spread his wings and develop next could be taking on a higher usage type of role that just isn't going to be available for him in Cleveland. Certainly making more money than the Cavs could be willing to pay someone that is a very low usage player, despite being a good defender. So that is why I think a sign and trade could make sense. And then what the Cavs could get back, depending on what else they can attach to Okoro in that sign and trade with the Nets, if they could get Cam Johnson back for Isaac Okoro and maybe some other stuff, I think that this offseason automatically becomes... I already think this offseason's a win, because the biggest thing to do was sign Donovan Mitchell to an extension, and that's done and over with now. But adding someone like Cam Johnson to this team, I think makes it an even bigger win than it already is. I really do. I really think that that is something that should make you feel really good if that happens. Now, Dorian Finney-Smith, I'm not as high on, and I understand that there are people that are certainly lower on Dorian Finney-Smith than I am, but he is someone that I think you kind of have to look past his numbers with the Brooklyn Nets over the past couple of years. I don't think that reading too much into what he's been in Brooklyn makes a ton of sense. So he was traded from Dallas to Brooklyn. This was back in 2022-23. He was traded there, and with Brooklyn, he has shot 33% on threes. When he was in Dallas, he shot 36% on threes. That's a pretty sizable difference. Now, I ask you, is his shooting in Brooklyn worse because he's a worse shooter? Or is it because the caliber of looks that he's gotten with the Nets has changed drastically? So he was part of the Kyrie Irving trade. Kyrie went to Dallas. Dorian Finney-Smith went to Brooklyn. Who's been creating shots for DFS in Brooklyn? That I think is a pretty key part of this. Is the caliber of shot, the caliber of open looks that he got with the Nets going to be the same that it would be with the Cavs? I don't think so. I think he would get better looks in Cleveland playing with guys like Darius Garland, with Donovan Mitchell, with Evan Mobley. Even if that spacing isn't perfect, having dynamic on-ball creators the way the Cavs do could be something that brings Dorian Finney-Smith back from someone that shot 33% in Brooklyn to the guy that shot 39% his last full season in Dallas. 39% from three his last full season in Dallas. Really, his last 2 full years in Dallas, he was a 39% three-point shooter. Playing alongside who? Luka Doncic. The Cavs don't have Luka Doncic, but they've got better creators than what Brooklyn has had while DFS has been there. So I do think that as you think about that as a potential possibility, as a potential addition, I think that is something that you do need to think about, is that the type of shots he was getting with the Nets are not going to be the same type of shots that I think he'll be getting with the Cavs. And what he does with those shots, well, that's very important. Obviously, he's got to make those shots, but I think those shots are going to be a little bit easier to make if he's getting a higher caliber of look in Cleveland than he was in Brooklyn. The Cavs coaching staff, I don't know that it's fully set, but we've got some names. I want to talk about them. I want to dive into a little bit of Summer League stuff too as we wrap up today's edition of Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. It is helpful to learn positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself, and it's not just for those who have experienced major trauma. So let me talk to you about this. Comparison at times can certainly be the thief of joy, right? Like we've all heard that phrase before, and it's so easy to envy other people's lives. You see what other people have going on, and it might look like they've got it all together on whatever social media app you're on, but in reality, they probably don't. And if you want to be able to focus on what you want, therapy can help you do that instead of focusing on what others have, so you can start to live your best life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All three of those things are very important. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Very important as well. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA, and you can get up to 10% off your first month. So lastly on today's show, Kenny Atkinson starting to get a coaching staff into place. We've heard a few names that have been reported. Jordan Ott going to be the head coach of the Cavs Summer League team, which will begin play later on this week in Vegas. They've got games Friday, Sunday, and then Wednesday and Thursday. I will be in Vegas, just as a programming note. I'll be in Vegas for the final 2 Summer League games, for the last 2 scheduled ones. I don't believe I'll be there for either their consolation game or their tournament run as they look to defend the 2023 Summer League championship that they took home last year. But Jordan Ott going to be the head coach of that team. I like his hire. He was someone whose name came up with the Charlotte Hornets when they had an opening earlier this offseason. It feels like forever ago that Charles Lee was hired as the Hornets head coach. But Jordan Ott was a name that came up for that. I think that it's a really good thing when the Cavs are hiring guys that their names have popped up for openings. Even if the opening isn't the same caliber that the Cavs opening has been or was, because obviously those are 2 franchises that are going in very different directions right now. So they were not looking for the same kind of head coach, but that doesn't mean Jordan Ott won't be a great assistant coach. DeMarre Carroll, another guy who has been hired on the Cavs staff. Carroll, you might know the name, was a member of that Atlanta Hawks team in 2015 that the Cavs swept. The Hawks won 60 games. Cavs swept them in the conference finals. He has been on the Lakers staff the last couple of years. I like this because I think it's a good thing when you can have a coach that has played against some of these guys in the NBA. I do think it's a good thing having someone that is not that far removed from being an NBA player himself. So I do like that addition to the staff. And then lastly, the coaching addition that I don't know that everyone expected, but I know everyone is excited about. Certainly the coach that the most people are excited about adding to this staff in Cleveland is Johnny Bryant. So Bryant comes over from the New York Knicks. He was the associate head coach to Tom Thibodeau in New York. Now he will be the associate head coach to Kenny Atkinson in Cleveland. Bryant, before spending time with the Knicks in New York, was in Utah with who? Donovan Mitchell. So Bryant and Mitchell are very, very close. Donovan has talked at times about how much Johnny Bryant has meant to him personally and professionally. So obviously that is some easy dots to connect. Bryant also did, his name popped up as a candidate the Cavs were interested in when they were selecting Kenny Atkinson to be the head coach. So there was some relationship there between Bryant and the organization. And I've talked to people about Bryant, people that know him, that the reason for his candidacy, if you will, in the Cavs job wasn't just because of his relationship with Donovan Mitchell. The people I've talked to about Johnny Bryant have raved about him, have said that, he's going to be a head coach in this league sooner than later. He is someone that I spoke with people that said, at least one person told me he's ready to be a head coach right now. He's had a great learning experience in New York, coaching under Tom Thibodeau. He has learned so much in the NBA, and he is his own coach. He's got his own personality. He's not Tibbs 2.0, but he's someone that has learned a lot, that is ready. And I think that this step in Cleveland, truthfully, if all goes well, I wouldn't expect Johnny Bryant to be in Cleveland for more than 2 years because he's very capable of being a head coach and leading his own team in that time. So I think all three of these hires are really, really awesome hires. Other than the Donovan Mitchell extension, I think the thing that Cavs fans should be most excited about this offseason, probably what this coaching staff looks like. I don't know that it could have gone much better. I like Kenny Atkinson a lot. I like the staff that he is assembling here in Cleveland a lot. I think Cavs fans should be very, very happy with what this coaching staff looks like. I want to talk a little bit about Summer League too before we get out of here. A couple of things. I mentioned Jordan Ott, the head coach of the Cavs Summer League team. A couple of things, two quick things that are worth watching as the Cavs get ready to play Summer League. I believe they have an availability today, so I'll have more to talk about on tomorrow's episode with this. But how does Craig Porter Jr. look? Remember that ankle injury a few months back? Real nasty, final game of the regular season. That is something that is worth monitoring. Not because he's not back to normal, but, the first time you're back in a competitive situation after an injury like that, where it was really nasty, and he would have been out for a couple of months, truthfully. How you look back in your first competitive action is something that I think is very important. And then what does Emoni Bates look like? He's listed at 190 pounds on the roster. He put on Twitter that he actually weighs 196, which is up quite a bit from a year ago when he was drafted. If Emoni Bates looks like he's just better than everybody else at Summer League because this is his second go-around in Vegas with the Cavs, that would be a great sign for his future as a potential role player, rotation player on the Cavs. Like, that would be really the best case scenario. So those are just two quick things to look for as Summer League starts to approach, but I'll have more on that as the week goes along. We will be talking about the Summer League games once they begin. So there's so much more for you this week right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. You can find the show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Leave us a 5-star review. Help us grow the show. You guys have been great. It's been great getting to do this show. And if you find us on YouTube too, make sure you give this video a thumbs up if you haven't. Make sure you're subscribed to the Locked On Cavs podcast channel on YouTube. Also hit that notification bell. You want to know right away when something posts on our YouTube. So check that out. I will be back tomorrow. Again, thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day.